Hello everyone, myself Deepthi, a faculty of Silver Hills Public School working in Social Science Department. Here we will discuss about Chapter 1, Rise of Nationalism in Europe from Part History, Class 10 CBSE. For your better understanding, I divided the chapter into different heads. The learning objective of this chapter is to know and understand about the concept of nationalism and nation state. Throughout this chapter, it tells us about the 19th century. 19th century means 1800 to 1900, and you know centuries will always go backward. During the 18th century or mid of the 18th century, a new force arose in Europe. And that force was not a physical force, not a war, not a weapon or not a tank. That force which made sweeping changes in the political, social and mental world of Europe. That force was feeling or an emotion, and that force was known as nationalism. And what is the byproduct or what is the end product of this nationalism? The end product of this nationalism is creation of nation states and abolishment of the feudalism or territorial monarchy or autocratic monarchy. Before we go to the next module, let me discuss about the 3 R's. You have heard about 3 R's: Renaissance, Reformation and Revolution. Renaissance, the intellectual activities that arose in Europe was known as Renaissance. It was a part of influences of philosophers, social and political changes. And due to this Renaissance, the changes in society known as Reformation. So what is Reformation? The total changes in the society known as Reformation. Due to this Reformation, what happens? Protestant movements and this Reformation or these total changes may affect the other contemporary society also with different methods. And that is known as revolution. So what is revolution? What is the impact of revolution? Due to this Renaissance and Reformation, what happened? The revolution happened. And last year you have studied about different types of revolution. No, French Revolution, Russian Revolution, Revolution in Germany. The next module, the beginning of the chapter, tells us about the Frederick Joliot's vision. Frederick Joliot was a French artist during 1848, after the French Revolution. French Revolution during the period of 1789. In this module, Frederick Joliot visualizing the nation which is made up of democratic socialist republic. And he published 4 prints. Here we are discussing only about the first print. The first print visualizes all the people from America and Europe marching into a long train and offering their homages to the Statue of Liberty. And you have studied the Statue of Liberty from French Revolution. On one hand, enlightenment, and the other hand, rights of man. The next question, what is enlightenment? It is an intellectual activity which tries to explain the nature of world and role of man on the basis of rationalism. What is rationalism? Rationalism means everything should be based on reasons and science rather than religious beliefs. Here comes, on the other hand, rights of man. Declaration of Rights of Man during French Revolution. By whom? By Jacques Rousseau. According to him, right to freedom, right to religion, right to speak, right to association, right to separation of powers. Again this picture depicts other image. What was another image? The other image was the scattered pictures of absolutism. Now here comes, what is absolutism? The monarchical government which is centralized, militarized and repressive in nature. Then we'll discuss about the utopian vision. Then what is the utopian vision? Or why the utopian vision? According to Frederick Joliot, that time during the 18th century or during the 19th century, all the regions were disintegrated into different principalities. And they were identified through their culture, through their flag or through their costumes. Frederick Joliot wanted to reunite all these into one nation or under one constitution. In the next module, we will discuss about French Revolution and the idea of nation. French Revolution played a very important role to transform, rebuild and restructure the Europe. The political and the social changes in Europe that brought about the revolution. And French Revolution gives us a clear and first picture about the nationalism. It is a transition of monarchy to republican form of government. When we studies about the French Revolution, the society was divided into three estates. First estate, second estate and third estate. The first estate were the clergy, nobles, and the third estate were the common people. The common people suffered a lot because they have to pay so many taxes. Oath of tennis court. They demanded one vote for one person. Oath of tennis court, formation of different political clubs, fall of Bastille, formation of National Assembly, and we have heard about Maximilian Robespierre, the rise of Napoleon. French Revolution, as you all know, French Revolution during the period of 1789. And what was it? What was the impacts of this French Revolution? The French Revolution played a very important role. Transformation of monarchy to a republican form of government. No? Then, La Patrie, Les Idéaux, emphasized a notion which united the community under a constitution. The tricolor flag was chosen to replace the former royal standard, and the weights and measures were standardized. Uniformity in laws, the privileges of the Catholic churches began to decrease. French language became the common language for the whole country. Other regional dialects were discouraged. Common national currency introduced. Then we have discussed about the different political parties or political clubs. That was Jacobins and Girondists. Due to this Jacobins political clubs activities and campaignings, this French army reached into different parts of the country like Belgium, Holland, Switzerland and other parts of Italy. The main idea was to spread the concept of nationalism. Next module says about the Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte was a military dictator. He introduced himself as a ruler or emperor of France in 1804. His aim was to rebuild France on the basis of equality, liberty and fraternity. Again, he wanted to reunite the European countries under France, under the leadership of France, so that he subjugated the Britain economy. Napoleon destroyed the democracy. How? Napoleon destroyed the democracy by establishing the monarchy or replacing the monarchy. But he was a good ruler for France during that revolution. He had introduced so many advancements in transport and communication, education and banking system. Even he started Bank of France to stabilize the economy of France. Again, he abolished the feudal system. He abolished the landlordism. Catholic churches, the privileges of the Catholic churches were declined or decreased. Then again, he restricted the guild system. The restrictions of guild system was taken by the Napoleon. Civil code, that was the major contribution of Napoleon was civil code. You have heard about Napoleonic Code or Civil Code of 1804. The another name of Napoleonic Code is Civil Code of 1804. And that was mainly for no privileges based on birth. According to him, no privileges based on birth. Abolished the feudal system. Transport and communication improved. Equality before law and no birth privileges. Then standardized the weights and measures. Secured right to property. Guild restrictions were removed. These are the such contributions of Napoleon. And he made so many arrangements in administration. But what happened? He also introduced increased taxation, censorship, then forced recruitment into the French army, and his idea was to conquer the world. That was not good for a democrat. So we can say that he was a dictator. He wanted to conquer the whole world. In that way, he is known as a dictator, but he has done so many good things for France. In that way, he was a democrat. Our next module says about making of nationalism in Europe. Italy, Switzerland and Germany were divided into kingdoms, duchies and cantons. The Eastern Europe and Central Europe were under the autocratic monarchy. And all the people from different ethnics and they speak different languages. Habsburg Empire ruled over Austria, Hungary. Actually, it was a patchwork of Italy. It also included Alpine region, Sudetenland, Bohemia. In Bohemia, the people speak the German language. They were aristocratic and they speak the German language. In Lombardy and Venetia, they speak the Italian language. In Galicia, the people speak the Magyar language. And some people speak the regional dialects. And all these political differences does not bring any political unity among the people. They were only loyal to their rulers. This module is about aristocracy and new middle class. The socially and politically landed aristocracy was the dominant class on the continent. Aristocracy means the richest section. The members of this class were by a common way of life. They shared a common way of life or common culture. And they owned estates both in the countryside and town side. They bonded with the ties of marriages. Actually, they were the majority. Numerically, they were the minorities. The majorities were the peasantry groups. When we go to West, the lands were farmed by the tenants and the small business people. But when we go to Eastern and Central Europe, the whole land was owned by the landlords and cultivated by the serfs. Our next topic is Industrial Revolution. You have heard about Industrial Revolution. It was started on late 18th century in Britain. Industrial Revolution is a transition, or man were substituted by machines. Also introduced factory system. Capitalism. That time the society was divided into three. That is the richest section, the working class, the ruling class and the middle people. And the middles were the educated industrialists. They were the professionals. They were the philosophers. And this middle class people came to known as liberal nationalists. When we discuss about throughout this chapter, we are discussing about nationalism and nationalist. So this liberal nationalists were the reason for the revolution. Our next topic. What did liberal nationalism stand for? In early 19th century, Europe were closely allied to the ideology of liberalism. You have heard about liberalism. The term word liberalism is derived from the Latin word liber, which means free. And this liberalism have many aspects. Like for the middle class people, for French Revolution, social aspects, political aspects and economic aspects. Actually, what was the main aim of this liberalism? Individual freedom, equality of all before the law, a government by consent, end of autocracy, end of clerical privileges. All the restrictions should be removed from the market, that is the economic sphere. No bonded labours, no serfdom, no discrimination on the basis of birth. So that is liberalism. Freedom to all. That was another concept of this revolution. And those people were known as liberals. Next topic is about conservatism. A new conservatism after 1850. After the defeat of Napoleon, a new ism arose in Europe that was known as conservatism. The conservatives are not ready to change. They believed the traditional institutions should be preserved. But they are not asking us to go back to pre-revolutionary ages. Actually, they accepted the modernization policies of Napoleon. According to them, a modern army, an efficient bureaucracy, a dynamic economy, the abolition of feudalism and serfdom could strengthen the autocratic monarchies of Europe. After the defeat of Napoleon, the Congress of Vienna was formed. The meeting was held at Vienna under the leadership of Austrian Chancellor Duke Metternich. And this Congress of Vienna, actually it was made for balancing the European powers, prevention of war, economic stability, restore the peace and restructure the Europe. The Congress of Vienna was formed by the conservatives. Why? Because they wanted to restore the Bourbon dynasty. And they made many series of states. They set up the series of states and the boundaries of France and Netherlands to stop the expansion. Prussia was given a part of Saxony. Poland was given to Russia. The Italy was added to the Piedmont of the south. But only the German Confederation made by Napoleon was left untouched. You know, what is the German Confederation of 39 states? He united the German-speaking people into under one confederation, or German principalities under one confederation. And Prussia took the initiative to make the custom union, or Zollverein. And what was the aim of the Zollverein? The aim of the Zollverein was to abolish the tariff barriers and to reduce the rupees from 30 to 2. Our next topic is the romantic imagination and national feeling. The development of nationalism did not come about only through wars and territorial expansion. Culture and language played a very important role for the unification of states and concept of nationalism. The cultural movement which sought to develop a national sentiment is known as romanticism. Actually, they were against or they criticized the glorification of science and reasons. They believed in emotions, in intuitions and mystical feelings. The German philosopher Gottfried Herder and Karol Kurpinski were the advocates of this romanticism. German philosopher Gottfried Herder, he believes in folk songs, folk poetry and folk dances, that the true spirit of the nation. The romantic artist and poet generally criticize the glorification of reason and science. The national feelings were kept alive through music and language. The language and culture played a very important role in developing nationalist sentiments. Making of Germany. The liberal nationalists played a very important role for the unification process of Germany. But it was suppressed by the militarians, the monarchs and the big landlords. These big landlords were known as Junkas. But the initiative or the leadership was took by Prussian government. The chief minister, Otto von Bismarck, known as the chief architect of this unification process. Three wars over 7 years with Austria, Denmark and France ended the victory of Prussia. Later, in 1871, Prussian king became the emperor or proclaimed as the emperor of Germany. Our next module is about Italian unification or unification of Italy. During the 19th century, Italy was divided into 7 states. The north was under the Austrian Habsburg. The middle was the center was controlled by the Pope, and the south was under the Bourbon dynasty in Spain. Only the Sardinia Piedmont was under the Italian control. Chief Minister Camillo di Cavour, the revolutionaries like Giuseppe Mazzini, Giuseppe Garibaldi played a very important role in the unification of Italy. With his diplomatic alliances, chief ministers, diplomatic alliances, Italy was unified in 1861 and King Victor Emmanuel became the ruler or the emperor of this unified Italy. Our next module, you can expect many 1-mark questions from this chapter. You can expect nation. What is a nation? A group of people living together in a geographical area with their own customs and traditions can be termed as nation. What is a state? When this nation is controlled by a government, it can be termed as state. What is a modern state? The centralized power exercised sovereign control over a clearly defined territory that was developed in Europe, known as modern state. What is a nation state? Nation state, it includes not only the rulers but also the citizens to develop a sense of collective identity, common culture and shared history. Then comes what is enlightenment? Enlightenment, it is the advancement in the intellectual activities that arose in Europe and which tries to explain the role of man and the natural world on the basis of rationalism. Now, what is rights of man? Declaration of Rights of Man by Rousseau. Right to freedom, right to expression, right to form association, right to separation of powers. That can be termed as rights of man. Next one, absolutism. It's a monarchical government which is centralized, militarized and repressive in nature. Then, what is utopian vision? During the 19th century, utopian vision by Frederick Zorro. Frederick Zorro's utopian vision tells us that time, during the 19th century, all the places were disintegrated. So he wanted to reunite the different principalities into one nation or under one constitution. That was Frederick Zorro's vision. Then, civil code, introduced by Napoleon, also known as Napoleonic Code. No privileges no privileges by birth. Next one, duchies. Duchies were the territories which ruled by the dukes. Then, cantons. Cantons are the subdivision of a territory. Then, liberal nationalism. What is liberal nationalism? We discussed the term word liberalism is derived from the Latin word liber, which means free. It also is a part of revolution. Freedom to all. Then, Zollverein. We discussed when Napoleon united the German principalities under one confederation, 39 states of confederation, different custom unions or different custom barriers. Prussia took the initiative to form the Zollverein or custom union. And the main aim of the Zollverein was to abolish the tariff barriers and reduce the currency from 30 to 2. Then Congress of Vienna. After the defeat of Napoleon, the European powers formed the Congress of Vienna in 1815. The major advancement of this Congress of Vienna, they wanted to restore the Bourbon dynasty. And this Congress of Vienna gave importance to stop the French expansion in different parts of the country. You can expect 5-mark or 3-mark question from this module. Frederick Zorro's vision. Then, impacts of French Revolution. Contributions of Napoleon. Liberalism. What is liberalism? What is conservatism? And what is romanticism? Now, you have to discuss about romanticism. Then, unification of Germany. Unification of Italy. These questions may expect for 5-mark question. Thank you very much.